When I'm not a storyteller or a graduate student or any of the other identities I've been known to assume, I'm a teacher, mostly with the young ones, in the early elementary school. I got my teaching certificate, which means I did all the coursework on the four basic pieces of the curriculum: language arts, social studies, math, science, along with special courses in the arts, the standard course of teacher education. What's also included, though less prominently, is what some teachers call classroom management, or the social curriculum. There are many aspects to this realm of teaching, but basically, it's about teaching students to be kind to each other and creating a classroom community together. Now that I'm teaching, I can say that the content teaching is actually pretty straightforward. I have all my professional resources, I have the standards from the state, planning time to figure out what fits where. Everything's laid out pretty nicely, you might even say. But how do you teach something like kindness? How do you get students to care for each other and about each other, to come together as a community? Well, when a teacher sees unkindness in her classroom, her gut reaction is to scold the wrongdoer. But does that teach kindness? One student grabs something out of the hands of another student, only to have the teacher grab it too, saying, "Don't take things from other people without asking." Is that a model of kindness? I've always heard that I was a kind child, always helpful, always pleasant. But there are plenty of stories to prove that I wasn't always that way, and certainly not naturally so. By rumor has it, I was such a colicky baby you could hear me screaming before I even came out. That's how I got the name Raging Bull, like the film of the same name from the year I was born. And I remember plenty of moments where I was clearly guilty of unkindness. Everything from sticking my tongue out at a teacher to even biting my brother, given he had taken the heads off of all of my Barbie dolls, so I felt justified in the moment. But anyway, at some point I got to thinking, how did I learn to care for others? When did I learn kindness? And what I found was a series of stories about myself that I have no recollection of in my own memory, which are fascinating stories to learn from. You are, in these stories, literally the hero of your own story, even though someone else is telling it. Well, this is mine. It all began when my brother, Jono, was born. I like to say that I don't remember life before my brother, because the very first memory I have of life itself is of the green sweater my mother wore during her pregnancy with him, and the large bulge that protruded from it. The next memory I have is of hearing my name whispered from the door of my preschool classroom. It was my mom's best friend, Margie, complete with the look of Meg Ryan in When Harry Met Sally, just with big red glasses. I knew that if she was picking me up, it was time to go to the hospital. "I'm going to meet my new little sister," I proudly announced to my class. You can see what I was convinced of. Now, fast forward to the door of the delivery room. It had an opaque window, and there was a kind brown-haired nurse named Kathy who sat with me outside until I was able to go in. And that's it. That's where my own memories of this time stop. But that's also where the best stories begin. Eventually, I was allowed to see my mom, my dad, and, well, that was no baby sister I could see. But just the same, the doctor was looking for someone to cut the umbilical cord. The tradition is to offer it to the father, but for whatever reason, my dad wasn't up to it. Now, you have to understand, I learned how to use scissors when my mom started letting me cut the thread from her quilting projects. "Do you want to do some scissor work for me?" she'd ask. So, I have this image of myself, looking at this umbilical cord, totally unfazed by the grossness of it, and thinking, well, it's sort of big for thread, but... And then I piped up, "I'll do it! I do good scissor work." Well, we all got home, settled into our new family of four, and all of a sudden, I was actually expected to take responsibility for myself. Because of this new baby, I had to start feeding myself, dressing myself, and, God forbid, entertain myself. Well, after 2 weeks, I curled up next to my mom, batting my eyelashes as best I could, saying, "Well, Jono is really great, and he's nice, he's cute, But you can take him back now. Mom responded with one of her classic lines, Avery, I'm afraid it doesn't quite work like that. So you know that phrase, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em? Well, I certainly couldn't beat my brother. He was clearly here to stay. And if I had ever thought to try to join him by acting like an infant myself, oh, I assure you, my mother would never have had any of that. And for that very reason, there was also no beating my mother. So the only option I had left was to join her. Because I really did want to please her, to know that she loved me, and more than anything, I wanted her to be proud of me, just like any child. And so began the uber feminine phase of Avery's childhood. If I couldn't be a little girl anymore, well, then I was going to be a woman, complete with a Cabbage Patch doll on one arm, 3 purses on the other, and a homemade 5-year-old manicure, courtesy of Mom's friend Margie.